What's good, agents? You are now rocking with Agent R. Welcome back to the channel. Doing a little bit of multiplayer here and doing some camo grinding, but I wanted to take this time out to actually speak on DMZ. Now, there was a cryptic tweet that I call it cryptic that came out concerning DMZ that was from the developers saying that essentially the lights are going to stay on, but in no way are there any guarantees in that system that any new content will be made. Essentially, you'll still be able to get into Al Mazrah and all the other spots. The challenges and the missions will still be there, but nothing was ever actually stated to us that, hey, you're going to get new guns from the Modern Warfare 3 Warzone update. Nothing about the new map or maps in general. No updates to missions, anything of the sort, right? So that said, and it's unfortunate. I mean, I guess this is what it must have felt like for people who really loved the first Warzone and Call of Duty Blackout, right? When Activision as a whole just decided to move forward off of those projects. People loved Blackout, still do, but Warzone is the thing now, right? So, and it seems like whatever this version of zombies is, they're like, hey, we don't want to just move forward with how DMZ has played out, even though it is still the beta. There are elements from DMZ that are in zombies. I'm not mad at them for doing so, because it's not their project. The group that I'm talking about, of course, is Sledgehammer. Sledgehammer is taking over the mantle for Modern Warfare 3. Raven was even asked about DMZ. Like the creative director was like, I don't even know what DMZ is. That was kind of odd. So that gives you the understanding that DMZ is completely spearheaded by Infinity Ward. So if anything is going to take place moving forward for that mode, as it's essentially going to be tied to, is what we're feeling, going to be tied to Modern Warfare 2, that Infinity Ward is going to actually have to come out and make those updates happen. Now, there's been a lot of fear mongering going on, of course, a lot of speculation about, what's going to happen to it or in that sort of thing. But again, at the end of the day, it was never a part of Modern Warfare 2. It was always a part of Warzone. I did not expect it to be a part of Modern Warfare 3, just following suit. None of the other developers, I don't think, really want to push that, especially it being a beta, want to push that forward. Maybe they already have all of the data they actually want from DMZ. They just moved it forward. I would still love for that mode to continue to get updates. I'd love for that mode to actually become a game. But of course, it is a business for them, and it's coming down to the dollars on that. And I think they wanted to see how much they could monetize their beta. So wherever they got, to that point, it seems like they're going to move on. And I say it seems like because that same tweet that was put out also stated that more information would be available closer to November the 1st, right? Or near season 1, actually, excuse me. So we'll see how that goes. I want to land on where I think a lot of the decision making started to turn for DMZ as far as updates, etc. And I think that lands squarely on the shoulders of the players. The main issue for me is not the amount of 6-mans, it's not the upgrading path, it's not the fact that they're pay to win skins. None of that stuff is the main issue. The main issue is that the developers did not care enough to figure out the mindset of their player base. DMZ introduced a feature called the plea system, right? And so when you down an enemy, there's an opportunity where instead of them just being completely wiped out of the game, say like a BR, right, that Warzone experience, you have the opportunity as an opponent to pick that character back up. You can pick your opponent up after you down them, and let's say you down them, you loot their bodies first, you pick them up, and once you pick them up, they become a teammate. Now, I think there was a time at which you could pick them up and there was like a window of opportunity, and then they could still be an enemy afterwards. The reason I say that is tied to, or that is the biggest problem, right? The police system being introduced to the player base in DMZ is that the developers underestimated just how entitled the community is when it comes to the PvP experience. I don't know at what point the community decided that DMZ was going to be a PvE predominant experience, but it was always PvE, right? PvP, VE. It was always a situation where you were fighting bots, and it was always a situation where you were fighting actual opponents that logged in just like yourself. But at some point within the game states, that became more of, hey, this person that is hunting players, this person that is actually shooting back, this player who's actually engaging is somehow toxic. And if you can't defeat that player, somehow that player is cheating. But all of this centers around the police system. If you were able to just take out an opponent and, you know, they left their loot on the ground, as it were, right? They're no longer in the game, and you just kept moving, right? You wouldn't necessarily have this sentiment, I don't believe, for people then wanting another player to pick them up. I mean, I've even seen it bad enough to where people are picked up and then they're like, hey, who has my gun? Who has my gun? And it's like, bro, you lost. What are you talking about? Why are you asking people who has your gun? It's their loot, right? They earned it. They took it. That's part of the looter extraction game play, right? Like that's what that's all about. In the game you can run around and craft things and make a vest, and a lot of players are like, nah, I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna go hunt somebody else who's came in with a vest, right? Or they went and made one. It's easier for me to do that, and that's a totally viable option. It's pretty fiber in my opinion. But the amount of entitlement centered around the police system, the fact that if you down someone, the amount of vitriol spewed at you if you don't pick them up. I like the police system itself because it gives another decision tree in the game, another path to take, another story to tell. However, the community is too immature to handle the decision tree itself, because when people kill you in the game and then they take your stuff and they move on, maybe they even talk shit afterwards, you have to hold that. But the fact that people complain so heavy on social media, in people's streams, in the comment section, to the developers, that over time more and more things about PvP continued to get nerfed, to where just a few days ago I was looking at it and there were so many players that were just running into bots, right? And it's like, well, what is this? This isn't really the extraction shooter process. And I totally understand that, you know, we're not looking for a hardcore experience like Tarkov, you know what I'm saying? Like, Call of Duty is still an arcade shooter, and I think DMZ handles that quite well. What I don't think it handles quite well is the player base, because it introduced a mechanic prematurely. It introduced a mechanic that they were not ready for. I can't at this point even imagine if they just would have let people stay down like Warzone and then introduce the police system later as, I don't know, like a mode, a unique feature that comes and goes, that is temporary, that adds another element to the gameplay that isn't something that people feel like has to occur because it's in the game. There was, and it's not sad for me because I was gonna upload a video and I couldn't do that because someone was so angry that when myself and a bunch of randoms were headed to the last exfil, we took out the players that were on the chopper. The amount of garbage that came out of dude's mouth, it was like, dude, I can't even edit this out. It sounds like trying to edit a Chief Keef song on the radio. Like, it's just a bunch of it just doesn't work, right? But that's standard in DMZ. That's normal in DMZ, and these are grown men doing this, right? It's just wild that this negative feedback loop exists, and that's what the police system has done. It's what the developers have enforced upon DMZ. Like, the police system ends up being a negative feedback loop where the better players have to endure or tolerate the cries of those who lost those rounds just because, right? So, oh man, you let me know in the comments below what you think about DMZ and its future. How do you think the police system plays out? Yeah, but I mean, that's my take on it. I think if that were handled different, or just even were in the game, I think DMZ would be a lot more enjoyable. And I think from a standpoint of competitiveness, there was a lot more on the table to experience from it. But as of right now, the future of the game is in limbo, so we'll see. But until next time, this has been Agent R. As always, much love. Prove your meta.